He was just such a selfish jackass at times that he'd get frustrated with stuff and he'd lash out with this, frustration.
So tell me what your dad's like.
My father, when people ask me what my father was like and is like, it, it's an interesting question because, you know, uh, I've changed a great deal in how I view a lot of my growing up. My father, when I was a kid, was both the scariest man in the world and the strongest man you've ever seen. He looks like Clint Eastwood with black hair. He's 6'4", 6'5", like that. Big, strong guy, built kind of like me, but 6'5". And he he's a difficult man. Um, I after seeing my grandmother and stuff like that. I mean, my grandmother was the only grandmother probably that her grandchildren didn't like seeing. It'd be like, oh my gosh, grandmother's coming. It'd be like such a whoop. You know what I mean? It'd be like, you're like, oh my goodness, it's so miserable. And everybody thought it was miserable, except for my father, And she was an interesting lady, the cocktail era, she's the type of lady that smoked cigarettes and then like would light one before putting the other one out and then, have 4 or 5 martinis, at 3 o'clock or 5 o'clock, whatever martini hour is, on. And she's at one of those types. And she's blue blood, and she's European blue blood. And so my father was kind of raised like that. And, my father lived a somewhat privileged life. I wouldn't say rich kids necessarily, but I would definitely say very well to do. And he went to Yale and graduated Yale and then was accepted into Harvard Law School. And then a year or two into that, he decided that he didn't want to do law. This is back in the Vietnam era. So he did his military service, and he was actually one of the very first Green Berets. And he just formed the Green Beret unit. And my father was one of the very first Green Berets. After his military service, he decided that he was going to go back to school, and he went to Rice and got his doctorate in economics. And the whole time, my father did this. He was an amazingly selfish man. He went to the military while he was married to my mom, and my mom had to struggle because, he was an officer, but lieutenants in 1960, whatever, you know what I mean, don't make money. He was very selfish. Everything revolved around him and, his school and stuff. And his mother, made sure he did that. I mean, he did not have to pay for any of that thing, for any of it. But my mom had to pay for it, so to speak, having to work and this. And I have an older brother that's a half brother. So she was also supporting a son from previous marriage. And my father never accepted him and ridiculed him all the time. And it's probably the saddest thing in my life is that, my older brother, I don't even think of him as a half brother, he's just a wonderful individual. And boy, he took the worst beatings out of all of us. My father was a physical man, and I wouldn't say Hollywood puts the abusive father as this alcoholic who can't control himself or this rageaholic who can't control himself. My father wasn't a drinker. He was just such a selfish jackass at times that he'd get frustrated with stuff and he'd lash out with this, frustration. And I'm sure, I have no idea. I'm not that close to my uncle. I'm trying to get closer to my uncle to find out because my uncle is like, I'd give anything to have my uncle as my father, from what I know. They're similar in certain ways, but also very different in others. And so I don't know what they had to deal with when they were growing up. I don't. But I know what I had to deal with. And I remember, um, just the beatings that my brother would take. And they weren't like, he didn't have to go to the hospital and stuff. But to be honest, I learned the art of intimidation at a very young age. And I found out something real simple. If I want to scare you, I don't hit you. Now, if I was to punch you, because who I am, it would be a very unpleasant experience for you, but you'd survive it. What I would do if I really wanted to scare you was I was going to tell you I was going to hit you. Then I'm going to describe all the pain and nerve damage I'm going to do to you and how you ain't never going to be the same after I hit you. And you're going to be so scared about that you're going to do what I want to do because you're going to avoid anything for me to hit you because I can make you that scared of me. My father had that same way, and we grew up with that. And when the beatings were so bad, I mean, I say beatings as maybe he'd hit us. I mean, it wasn't like he sat down and beat us so we couldn't walk, but he'd hit us. And he was vicious to my older brother. He definitely was not as vicious on us. And I have, to give you a circle of my family, my older brother is Marshall, and he's 7 years older than me. And then I have two younger brothers that are twins, and they're 10 months to the day younger than me. I'm born January 1st, 68, and they're born November 1st, 68. And, oh, you know, I, I carry a lot of guilt because I was kind of like the favorite kid, and I took the least amount of beatings and least amount of intimidation. And so to finish things, my father, he, like I said, what he was a confused man. I think, he was a man that never lived up to his potential, but will tell you all about your stuff. He was a tremendous justifier. Even today, he justifies. He hides behind religion to justify his things. You need to be forgiving, guys. And I've forgiven you, Dad. That's not the point. I'm just not going to put up with the rest of the crap. Just because people get the problem with like my father's religious beliefs now is that people think because you're a Christian, that doesn't make you superstitious. Christianity is not a superstitious religion. The practice of Christianity can be extremely superstitious. And that's where my father's at. I think he feels a tremendous amount of guilt for what he did. He had, he blamed my mom for the divorce. It was all her fault. She made all this stuff up. I'm like, I got a dentition in my chest from one of his rages, one of his things. That's not made up. And my older brother has wounds that he had from him. Those aren't made up. And, he acts like there was some kind of spiritual thing against him, someone conspiring on him. And there wasn't. It was just that we had enough. And my mom's not a particularly brave woman. She has got the heart of a saint, but she ain't tough. And she dealt with my father, and she was intimidated by my father. My father's the only guy I know who yells without raising his voice. My father can shut a room up by walking in. He has a presence. And so that's kind of my dad, kind of a whole, and kind of got a roundabout description of him, but he's a big, scary man. He can also be very loving in his own little way. It's conditional, but it's the best he knows how to do, and that's how I understand it, and that's why I deal with it, now. And he is 100% right. You're 100% wrong. There is no wiggle room for him, even when the facts are put in there. Like, I love giving him a hard time. I study religions, and I've read the Bible 3 times. Most people have never read the Bible, and it always cracks me up when people start quoting stuff from the Bible. And I'm like, Why don't you read the next paragraph where it nullifies exactly what the first line said? But that's a different question. So, and I've studied all sorts of different texts, and he was, ranting and raving about us going to church, and just because we don't go, he goes to a very, very, very orthodox type, thing, and it's like, to me, that's the worst kind of superstition. When you got educated people being superstitious, and so I always give him a hard time about it a little bit, but it's amazing. I'll give him thoughts like, he'll talk about, well, the Bible, the New Testament is 2,000 years old. I mean, like this, I go, yeah, well, there's religious texts that go 10,000 years old. Oh yeah, which one? The Hindus. Really? That's bullshit. And I'm like, all right. So I'll show him evidence, and I'm still wrong. I mean, come on. I mean, I'm like, that's my dad, and we've had a strained relationship. It was funny. When the divorce came about, I felt real bad about it. I mean, out of all the kids, it sounds funny. I'm probably the most emotional out of all the children, and when the divorce came about, I felt bad for my dad. It was funny. I mean, my dad was a master of psychological warfare. In fact, that's what he studied in the military, and he was a master at it. He made us feel guilty, but he was the jerk. You know what I mean? We don't, and stuff. And I think my father, like I said, I know my father loves me. The problem is with my father to have acceptance. It's very conditioned. And so it was my mom, my older brother, and me and my younger brothers, and we had, my father made a lot of money, so we lived in a well-to-do neighborhood, and the divorce happened when we moved to Texas. I was born in Houston, and then I think I was 1 or 2, and we moved to Connecticut, and then we lived 2 years there, and then 2 years in Pennsylvania, and then we moved back to Texas, and we were there in Richardson for a while, and we lived in an area called the Reservation, which I don't know if it's still, but back in the 70s, that was like the nice, really super nice neighborhood of Richardson. And because it was named off all these Indian streets, they were all, and I even still remember the street name, 1418 North Cheyenne was where we lived. It's funny I can remember that. And it's amazing because I get hit in the head so much I can barely remember anybody's name. That stuck in my brain. And so we went from living there to living in East Richardson, where I was 1 of 3 white kids in my class. So there was a complete, and it went from going from schools that encourage you to, do well, to babysitting. Basically, the school. People talk about everyone has a fair chance. No, if you're a poor kid in America, the school that you get to go to sucks, because I know. And and it was tough. And then, what happened there was, you know, you had to fight, you had to show you were tough, you had to show you were strong. We lived in this ratty apartment complex. We lived in a 3-bedroom ratty apartment complex. And I had to share a room with my mom for like a year. Because my older brother was at that age when he was like, I want to have my own room. My 2 younger brothers lived together. So I volunteered, I'll live in mom's room, you know what I mean? And, mainly what I did was I just had my clothes there and I slept on the couch a lot, you know what I mean? And it was, and there were times when you were wondering when you were going to get food, and stuff, my mom did her best, but she was not an educated woman. She went to school at UCLA. She didn't finish because she had a baby, she got married. And you understand this is the early 60s. So a lot of women didn't finish their educations. You know what I mean? That was still the idea that you were going to be, the Leave It to Beaver type family. And that, didn't turn out. And then my father discouraged her from working, discouraged her from education, take care of my children kind of stuff. He a bit of a caveman like that. I had dyslexia, or I have it. I just have it under control now. And so school wasn't that easy for me, and I never actually got my diagnosed with my dyslexia till I was 25 years old. and it wasn't a severe case like a lot of people, but it slowed my reading down. And so, and then you have to read and write and all this other stuff. And so I didn't do real well. So I did well because I was smart, but it was like I didn't have the skills the other kids had. You know what I mean? Most of them could read real well. Now I could read, but it took me forever to read, and I rebelled against that. And so being who I was, it was amazing that I either had teachers absolutely love me or really dislike me. And I find that in life, I've kind of like that. People either really like me a tremendous amount or they really don't like me. And they probably have a reason not to like me. Uh, but I find that the thing. And so what I would do was, I had the capacity of making somebody so irritated with me that they would just lash out at me. Teachers would say, "You're a loser." So between my father still trying to be in my life before he moved to New York, like we were playing baseball, and I was a good athlete, and it was always kind of funny because my brothers were very good students. So it was like, even though my mom didn't necessarily mean to do it, it'd be like, these are John and Kenny, and they were like honor roll type guys. And guy's a tremendous athlete. you know, and the sad part was my brothers were really better athletes than me too. That was really the sad part. But I had the enthusiasm for it that my brothers they would get bored so easy. I mean, they could teach themselves anything. They taught themselves how to play tennis. They did. They taught themselves how to play tennis, and they beat one of my very good friends who was two-time New York State tennis champions. And so being a New York State champion, that's a big deal, right? And they smoked him. He got him so mad, he broke his racket, and he's never played tennis since, he said. And I still see him. That's how good athletes these guys were, you know what I mean? But they just never pursued it to the level I have. Well, athletics is what I had. I got my first steps third grade. I was the fastest kid in third grade. They have these little fairs, twice a year. I won all the races. I won all the jumping contests. I won all the strength contests. And you got to understand, my father, in his infinite wisdom, started me at school at 4 years old. Now, on the East Coast, that's not such a big deal because most of the kids start around 5 then. All right? But in Texas, man, most of the kids start at 5.5 and 6. So I was a year or 2 years younger, a year and a half to 2 years younger than everybody else. Even though I was a big kid, I wasn't big for my grade. So when I was playing like the Pop Warner type football and that baseball, well, I excelled because I was with kids my own age. But when I went to play football and middle school, I wasn't so big. And so it was kind of a challenge. But I was always really determined to do something. And I was determined to be a somebody because my father, I remember, okay, I used to play pitcher. I used to play catcher. I really enjoyed catcher more than pitcher. And so I was a catcher, and a kid slid in, and tried to take me out coming in, and I said the ground boom, but he jammed his thumb on my throwing hand, and so I couldn't grab the baseball. So I'm having to literally like shot put the ball back to the pitcher. And my father, in the most humiliating situation, I like to think I'm over it, but I always get so freaking mad even now. My father sat behind the umpire, and okay, I had mowed his lawn because we're divorced now. Okay, and I mowed his lawn. He lived in Highland Park. He paid me $5 for it, but he hadn't paid me yet. He took 50 cents off the money he owed me every time I did not make it directly back to the pitcher. And you got to understand, my thumb was so jammed up I couldn't bend it. I'm shot putting a baseball, I'm in like 5th grade. And he was riding me and riding me and riding me so bad that you could see the parents on both sides moving from him because he's scary. And I remember one of the bravest men ever was my baseball coach. And he was this, because again, we're living in East Richardson. And he was this kind of salty black guy. And he looked over and he said, "Why don't you be quiet, Mr. Mesger?" And he goes, "Why don't you mind your own business?" He goes, "This is my business. I'm the coach. And I'm going to have to ask you to leave." And my father kind of looked at him. I thought, oh, shit, it's going to be a fight. And I'm like, this is the middle of a baseball game, a little league baseball game. I'm humiliated, you know, and scared for my coach. But I have some reason later on I think about it, my coach probably would have whooped my dad. But that's the kind of stuff I had to deal with. And so I was like, I'm going to be a somebody, because my father literally told me, if you don't do this, you're going to be anybody. You're going to be, so nothing was ever good enough for him. Nothing was ever good enough for him. So when you talk about conditional, it was so difficult to even understand what it was that he wanted outside of, like, he wanted me to go to Yale. Like when I got a scholarship to do, these different things, it wasn't Yale. It wasn't this. Oh, I can't believe you want to go to Texas Tech because they're paying for my school. Why don't you pay? I'll go to Yale, pay for it. you know, I mean, not that I could get into Yale. My grades weren't good enough, but you know what I'm saying, and so it was so difficult to know, we're sitting there searching for our father. And this is the sick part about it, guys. I don't care how bad your freaking dad is. You still want acceptance from him. You still want a boy from your dad, and, it's most of us don't even know how to get it. We try everything we possibly can, and that's the funny part. Everything was conditional with them, but then the conditions would change. And you never got that a boy. I can never remember outside of like I hit a grand slam one time on this team. I hit a grand slam. It was like just a thing. It was a bottom of the thing. We had like one out or something like that. Literally, it was like a 3-2 thing, and I cracked this game-winning grand slam because we were down by like 3 points. Right. I remember my father coming out and picking me up, and that was like, wow. It's the first. That's probably really only really big data boy that I can remember. I can remember. It might have been some more, but I don't remember. I've always had. I'm very fortunate that I've always had really like the old the Bronx Tale. The gangster's talking to a young kid, and he goes, "You get 3 good women in your life." The problem, I got them all when I was 17. Well, I had a string of really good women. They weren't they weren't the woman, but they were really good women, and I had a bunch of them. I mean, and so somebody got ripped off. Somebody got shorted 1 or 2 if you only get 3, because I had about 5. But invariably, the 2 women that I had the most connection with, the only 2 women, I never considered getting married, even when I was living with a woman one time. Like 4 years, we were like married, but I never thought of marrying her. Which was a shame. She's a great girl, but she just wasn't for me, and I knew it. But the 2 most important women in my life, the 2 women that I actually thought about marrying, one is my wife that I did marry, and one was another woman and they all had reasonably good relationships with their fathers. Now, their fathers were like kind of Jimmy Buffett songs, kind of lovable loser guys, you know what I mean? But they had a really good relationship with them. And I noticed that the connection that I had with them was much better. The women that had father issues, there was always a drama there. There was always an issue there. There was always something there that did. So my advice, I always tell the young kids, and I say, listen, find out if she has a relationship with her dad. If she doesn't, run. Because you're going to save yourself a whole bunch of headaches, brother. I'm just telling you right now. When we talk about my father, the negative, stuff always comes up first, But I also credit my father for a lot of positive things in my life. My father had a strong sense of honor. At least he projected it, and respect. And he said, you have to have, he used to always say, having the respect of intelligent men is the greatest gift you could possibly have. And he was, he was big on education, and obviously Yale, Harvard, Rice. And so that was always drawn in me. I mean, the idea of education was an important part, even though I'm not probably classically educated. My desire to learn is insatiable. I mean, I have become one of the leading experts in health and fitness by studying stuff. You wish your doctor or lawyer knew their trade like I know mine. And and that's all from just being, continual education. My father was very, very big on that, and he was very big um, on self-reliance. And a man stands on his own 2 feet, and a man takes care of his family. Although he wasn't a great example of that, these are things. But honor was a big deal, and respect was a big deal. My older brother got shipped to downtown Stanford to put a school called Cluniam, which was like the biggest outlet for brown heroin out of New York, And so there's this tremendous violence. I mean, my brother went to junior high there, and within a year there was 3 deaths. There was like murders, and there was drug overdose deaths and things like this. And so my older brother, he was not a big kid. He didn't get his growth spurt. Literally, he grew like 4 inches when he was 21 years old. I'm not exaggerating. It was like from like age 19 to 21, he grew 4 inches. And it was like crazy. He was always a small little guy. And you get picked on because he's small. But my father, in his infinite wisdom, is reading the paper about all this crazy drug stuff, being the proactive father that he is. He goes down there and starts talking to the principal. Principal's going, "What do you want me to do? Nobody will, point out who the drug dealers are. Nobody will this. Well, my son will." So my older brother got called into school, and he got named a narc. He got beat up so bad, he had to go to the hospital. He's lucky to be alive. The only reason he was alive because they had security there, and they literally broke a metal chair over his back, a metal chair. And my father was so outraged by that not that I'm pro to people should do something like this, but he went down to the school. He grabbed the principal by the face. He put a gun in the principal's face. He said, "If anybody puts a hand on my son, I'm going to come here and shoot you. Then I'm going to shoot everybody that my son points out to me." And he walked out. Principal was so scared, didn't call the cops, called in all the guys, all the known drug dealers, and said, "You better not touch this kid or his father is going to kill you." And my brother never got a hand laid on him again. Now, as insane as that is, I was showing some love. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but he was showing some love. And, so it's not like my father wasn't capable of love. And my father could show affection. It wasn't that. He would play with us and stuff and things. Another lesson I took from my father is my father could take the emotion out of anything and look at something in purely a logistic way, and that was something I never really mastered really well, but it's something I work on, which is a very important factor in a lot of lives. We make too many decisions out of emotion, and my father, he could look at things logistically instead of emotionally, and so that was one of the good things. He was also very much into the physical culture, so he was and that carried on to me. You know what I mean? One of our punishments was push-ups, and he would make us do push-ups. Now, sometimes you get really irritated, and it would be snowing outside, and we have to go out in our underwear and do push-ups, but we did push-ups. It was like, how can we punish and productive? And because of that, I was probably the strongest kid in my school because I got in trouble a lot. So I did, I could do 100 push-ups like nothing, but most kids couldn't do 5. And this changed my life forever was because I was just being a kid, and I had all these muddy shoes. We were living in Connecticut. No, we live in Pennsylvania, and we had this big old, it's beautiful, and my shoes were all muddy and everything, and I don't really even know why I did it, but I called through the window instead of going through the door. You know, it was kind of a goofy thing kids do. And so I didn't realize how muddy my shoes were. And so I just got done putting the um, putting the screen back on the thing, and I turned around and my father was there. And I looked around and there was mud on the walls and mud, and I was like, "Oh shit!" And he went into a rage, and I don't even know how old I was. Pennsylvania, I was probably second grade, maybe third grade. I don't know how old that makes me. Um, and he picks me up and he throws me through the window. The window isn't closed, thank God. I just went through the screen. But I went sailing. I probably literally went 3 feet, 4 feet through this, thing. And I landed on a rock bed there. I landed on the rock bed. And I wasn't hurt as much. I was just like completely freaked out. I didn't know what to do. So I get up. I don't know what to do. You know, what do I do? And my father comes out and he's raging because I went through the screen. He threw me through the screen, but he's mad because I broke the screen now and the mud. And I'm like, I remember just like, I was crying. I wasn't hurt. I was just so freaking scared and didn't know what to do to make it right. I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? And he's coming at me, and and I was so freaking scared. I couldn't even move. And there was kind of a slight hill led by my brother, John. He goes running down the hill. And he gets between me and my dad. He puts his hands up to fight my dad. And my dad backhanded him and he stayed there. And I got up and I ran away. And I left my brother there. Because then my dad's anger was on him, not me. And we had this little fort out in the woods, and my dad couldn't find it. We used to hide from him there. He'd walk around the woods. He'd try to find it. He knew he had it, and he would literally walk on his time trying to find out where our fort was, and he could never find it. And I was hiding in my fort. And finally, all the kids, came to the fort. And it was the most cowardly act I ever did in my entire life, was leave my brother there. And it's so hard to describe how scared I was that moment. And, but it changed my life. From that moment on, I was never going to let that happen ever again. Nobody is going to lay a hand on my family. Nobody's going to lay a hand on me. And I started, that moment on, I started getting involved in combat-oriented sports. I would read karate magazines. I would read all kinds of stuff like that. And I would work out. We didn't have a gym or nothing. We just work out and do things. And I trained. And I was good at all sports. I mean, it sounds a little bit immodest, but it's just the facts. I was a top football player, soccer player, swimmer, baseball player, you name it. I played them all and I was good at them all. But I never, I was always fascinated with the combat sports. And I trained. And fast forward, like, all there was, I think it was like my dad had remarried, and he had 2 children in his new marriage, and she was a wonderful woman. And so I figured that there may be some hope for my father, because of this. And I wanted to know my sisters, and so I reattached with them, and I was a freshman in college, I believe. Yeah. So my freshman year in college for Thanksgiving, I went to visit my father. And that's when all the realization that my father's rhetoric to me was just bullshit. Do as I say, not as I do. I guess it's not bullshit. It's just do as I say, not as I do. Well, he's having an affair. Here's a man who talks about telling the truth, about what's honorable, about respect, not respecting his wife. He's obviously not being honorable about, the marriage, and he's a fucking liar. Excuse my language. And I didn't know about this. Okay, so I'm there having Thanksgiving, and this woman was the most the most manipulative woman I ever met. You know what I mean? And she had my father. It's so funny. My father's so smart, but I knew more about women by age 13 than my father knows today. It's so funny. It's like crazy. And then, he had it was so easy to see how he was just being led like a bull with a ring in his nose, by this woman, because he's so much more intellectually superior than me. There's no way. I'm like going, you gotta be kidding me. Middle of Thanksgiving, he gets a phone call. His wife answers the phone. She says, I'm not gonna let you talk to him. He's here with his son, having Thanksgiving, and you're gonna have to call back. And my dad grabs the phone. I'm like, what are you doing? Grabs the phone. What's this woman? And she's lonely on Thanksgiving. And she wants my father to come. So my father goes. And I had no, I'm like, what's going on? And he goes, you wouldn't understand. Try me. At this time, I'm 17 years old. I was in college at 17, but I was, you know, I was, a man then, and by then, I was already, basically, because of my father, I was supporting myself at completely 100%, like clothes and all that kind of stuff at age 15, helping out with the mortgage and all that other stuff too at age 15. So I pretty much thought I was a man. I mean, I had lots of lessons. I found out I'm not, but I was like, so what's going on? So Sheila, that was my dad's ex-wife. She's like, why don't you tell him, Stephen? Tell him what's going on. And he goes, and he looks at it, he goes, you shut up. And it was like, bam, flashback to when I'm a little kid. My heart starts beating and I'm sitting down, at the dinner table. And I feel like that kid. And I was like, holy crap. And she's like, no, Steve. And he's like, he's getting up on her, you know what I mean? I mean, he's like up in her face. And I'm like, do something, do something, do something. This is going in my brain. And I'm this kid who got thrown out the freaking window again all of a sudden, right? And I'm like paralyzed, and he starts to walk off. And I sit there and I spoke up. I go, what are you doing? He goes, I'm leaving. I go, everything you've ever told me is bullshit. And he spins around, looks at me, goes, you don't use that language in this house. I go, I will use any language I want to use. And it was this all of a sudden it was like a clay statue breaks, and I have all this, and I stand up, and I sit there and I go, you asked me why I spend so much time and energy doing karate. You asked me how much time I spend doing wrestling. You wonder why I am fascinated with these things like this. I go, it's because of you. I spent my entire life for this very moment. Very moment. I go, I am 5-time Texas State karate champion, 4-time United States karate champion. I'm a 2-time high school All-American wrestler, and I have a going to wrestle in college. You are no longer the disciplinarian in my life. You will no longer put your hands on me or put the hands on people that I care about. And my father started walking towards me. And thank God the table was there because my knees were shaking. And I stood him in the eye, I sit there and I go, I'm ready to go if you are. And I made this very dramatic, kicking the chair back. I also knew showmanship at a very young age. You know, I kicked the chair back and I stood up in his face like that and I went, and he looked at me. He knew that I was ready to go, that there was no intimidating me, no more. Father and me have never, our relationship has always been different because of that. That very moment, things changed, and he was trying to win my approval. He tried to introduce me to this woman, and I knew her. It's like I said, I'm phenomenal at figuring out human nature. I study it. I did it as in martial arts because I had to figure out how to defeat my opponents that were better than me. How do you beat them? Because you can beat anybody. I don't care how good you are, how skilled you are. If you know that person, if you can get to know them, what makes them tick, you can beat them. And so I became a tremendous thing. And my father, and I knew this woman. I knew what she was. The only really great justice about the whole thing is that he married her, and he's completely miserable with her. And there is certain justice and things. But it was like, wow, he's got these 2 new beautiful children, and and he's willing to do this. It's crazy. And so that was kind of like the changing point in my life, on a lot of things. I stopped doing. It wasn't a sudden transformation. It was a gradual I stopped doing things that were expected of me by people that weren't reasonable. You know what I mean? I mean, you're expected to be polite to your mother. That's not a problem. But I wasn't gonna just do stuff like the whole time. I'm still trying to get this acceptance from him. I want to get the freaking data boy. You know what I mean? And I no longer wanted that aspect. And I said that I'm going to be a somebody. I said, he's told me most of my life I'm not going to be anybody unless I do what he says. Well, it's impossible to do what he says. It's impossible. I can't go to Yale. I can't do these things. I mean, it was impossible to get his love and get his acceptance and get things away because he made it impossible. So I said, I'm going to do my own thing. And I did. And I looked at it, I go, the funny part is what I told my father too is I told my dad, I said, I have trained my whole life for this very moment. My entire life, I went through my credentials like I did, of how prepped I was to whoop him. And I sit there and I go, and all I see is the shell of a man that I thought you were and a very pathetic guy, very pathetic man. And I think that broke a piece of him inside. I could see him physically wilt as he walked off. And I think when you put so many facades up and you believe it, I tell people all the time, like the fight business, like I go, problem with me leaving the fight business was I put so much myself of who Guy Mezger is in the fight business. I was the world champ. I was a multiple world champ. I was like, I want to win another world title. I'm like, well, what would 6 world titles do versus 5? Um, because you see, you put this facade up, like, we all do it, but my father was a lot like me in this, and mine wasn't as negative as his, but like in the fight business, you're Batman. You're invulnerable. You get to be, you get to say, cool things and cliche things, and people like, oh, and your fans love you for being a tough guy and talking tough, and you wear this armor like Batman. The reality is, you're Bruce Wayne. He's wearing a costume. So, sooner or later, you got to put the costume up because, Batman with a pot belly isn't going to work, And so, you know, and I think that, it becomes a difficult thing for people. And I think my father was a little bit lost at what to do when the facade of this iron giant was finally, I looked behind the curtain, and I found out who the Wizard of Oz was. And, it was different. I still tried to stay in touch with them because of my sisters, but he made it increasingly difficult because I reminded him of who he really was. And so it was, I all the tough stuff, everything doesn't always have a negative thing. Some people go negative; they become criminals, they become this, they become that. But it was my lever, my focus. Now, I really wish I had done something different because I would make a wonderful doctor, I think. But I was so focused in what this self preservation and this self reliance and all this stuff that, I didn't do what it took to be those things. You know what I mean? I always think, what would have been different if I had my Uncle Eric, he's a stern man too, but a loving man. There's an expectation out of him. I can tell, I don't know him as well as I want to, but he's the dad I want. Well, I want a dad who expects a lot out of me because I'll rise to the occasion. See, I rose to the occasion that my father did. It really did. I became the pinnacle of what my father made me do, which was I was scared out of my freaking brains about him all the time. So I'm going to do something about being scared. I'm going to be strong. You know, I mean, I was the strongest bench presser, for body weight in 8th grade. It's 95 pounds. I could bench press 185 pounds, you know? And, I mean, that's like twice my body weight, I could do that. And, it was these, you know, when we talk about the influences, my father made me, he made me who I am. Now, I'm not ashamed of who I am. I don't make apologies of who I am. But what could I have done different if I had something different, You know, because, you know, being a professional fighter, even a really good professional fighter, I don't get to change the world too much, you know. As a teacher, I get to change the world a little bit, but how could I change the world? Maybe if I was a doctor or something. I mean, so we are products of our parents. I mean, people don't get it. Very few people they don't get it. Go, well, I'm not a product of my parents because they're a bunch of losers, and they live in a trailer park, and I live here. No, you are, because you resented being in a trailer park your whole life, that you went and did something about it, whether it's negative or positive. You are that byproduct. And the influence that your father has, staggering. I mean, staggering. I'll tell you how tough it is even now. I retired from fighting. Just so you know, my father has never seen me fight. Never. Never. Just so you guys get an idea how many fights I've had, I had 145 professional fights. That's like 5 careers. You figure you might catch one of those 45, right? I've been on 20 pay-per-view events. He's never seen one of them. Even when I tell him about them, I send him a disc of like my fights. And my sister said that he never watched them, never saw them. that they took it. He actually threw it away. They took it out of the trash and kept it so they could watch their brother.
Watch the Father Effect movie for free on YouTube.